Fred Bear once said, "Immerse yourself in the outdoor experience. It will cleanse your soul and make you a better person." Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors podcast, where we dive deep into the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of hunting. And now your hosts, Dave Ashworth and Corey Bauman.
Welcome to the Rooted Outdoors podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Corey Bauman, and I'm with my good friend again, Dave Ashworth. And just in a minute, we're going to introduce these awesome two dudes below us on this awesome night of recording another podcast. Dave, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Pretty excited about our guest here tonight. Pretty excited to dive in, but other than that, not many updates. You know, it's February. It's kind of a slow time of year when it comes to the hunting side of things. So not too much to update on right now. How about you?
I mean, you did scout. You just recently scouted.
I was hiking.
Grabbed the camera that you had kind of out there, but nothing on it. Nothing really going on.
Nah, not much. Just scout for a day, recover for 5. That's kind of how it goes these days. So
yeah, I hear you, man. I got no scouting, but I will say this. I just got my truck back. And if you've had, I had a warranty issue with my truck. It's literally been at the dealer for 13 days. It took them 8 days just to diagnose it. And the whole time the part was at the dealer. And then it took them another 4 days. Man, it is tough. Like, and they don't have any loaner cars or anything right now because they sold them all off. And so I finally got my truck back today. I had a rental. We were using my wife's car. It's just been crazy, but finally got my truck back. So that's kind of the big thing for me right now.
I can imagine not having a car or a truck is not good.
It's tough. So, but why don't you introduce our guest for tonight, and let's jump into this thing, man.
I will. So I just to give you kind of a backstory how we met. So a good buddy of mine was at I don't even know what the show is called, the big outdoor show in Pennsylvania. And he sends me a text and said, "Hey, I found the new tree stand that you need to buy," is what he told me.
Nice.
And he said that he was talking to Josh, who's one of our guests tonight. And so our guests tonight are Josh and Jarad. They run a company called Elevate Stand Company.
Awesome.
And Dylan said he had a really good conversation with our buddy Dylan, and that we needed to have them on the podcast to kind of share a little bit of their story, not only from the company side, but just the background on them, just solid men of faith, and felt like it would be a good conversation. So here we are. I'll kind of let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit better than I just did, but that's a little bit of the backstory. But Josh and Jarad, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm Josh, and born and raised in Sterling, Kansas, and didn't really make it too far. So we're from Hutchinson, Kansas, and I'm sure we'll talk about our history and our past here in the podcast. So I'm Jarad, and obviously grew up in the same location that Josh did, given that we're brothers, and I live in Hutchinson as well. So.
Yeah. Cool. So before we go any further, I know you guys are pretty serious whitetail hunters. You guys are entrepreneurs. You run a company. So I know you're competitive. So which one of you two is the better hunter? Off the bat.
Yep.
Let's just get right into it.
Oh boy, that's a good one. So I think a little bit of history on that for probably about 11 years, I had the biggest whitetail, and I kept pretty quiet about that. I didn't ever tell him. I would remind him.
I'm sure.
Maybe 1,278 times, but then he did. He beat me in 2019, and beat me by a pretty good margin. So so he holds the crown on that one for now.
Yeah, I saw the video on that one. That was so for anybody that go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say that every year it's a competition too.
Yeah, I bet. So for anybody that's wondering, and I hope I get this right, but the deer that you're talking about is a 201-inch whitetail,
That's right.
correct?
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking like a serious deer. So that
Yeah.
beats a lot of people, most people. Like it doesn't matter who you are. That's
Yeah.
serious stuff. So
Jeez.
that's pretty
Yes.
cool.
And it was obviously I was very fortunate to harvest him. A lot of things had to go right, but I did pass him up in 2016, and he was a mid 160s
Wow.
deer at that time.
Wow.
But I'm like, he was probably a 4.5 is what I guessed him at, and I'm like, I know if I pass him up that he could blow up into a giant. And then two years later, he comes by me. It's 2018. He comes by me at like 12 yards, and I instantly knew what deer it was. I think it was his right side, and he came by and he had broke off his almost entire left side. He was in the mid 180s that year. So then in 2019, he just, kept getting bigger and killed him on the second hunt. And Jared's son, my nephew, actually was the one that helped record that hunt. So
Wow, that's awesome.
That's sweet.
He was 12 at the time, so for him to be able to be involved on a deer that size was pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah, I bet. Hopefully he doesn't think that's what he's going to be killing every year.
Yeah.
'Cause he's going to be a little disappointed.
Poor guy.
yeah, obviously you have to have a 200-inch deer on your property to even be able to have the opportunity to kill them, and they obviously few and far in between. So feel very blessed to be able to get that deer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We know what it's
now
like.
that
We know
yeah,
what
go ahead.
we know what it's like to chase a close to 200-inch deer, which we think, but not kill it. We know that.
We do. We do. Yeah, that might never happen again, especially in Pennsylvania. That was pretty lucky,
cool.
but
Oh yeah, absolutely.
did not work out, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
So now that we have the most important question out of the way, why don't you guys just give us a little background on the company, what you guys do, just for our listeners out there, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, you want to take this one?
Sure. So the company, Josh and I have always talked about trying to do something in the outdoor industry. We've hunted since we were little kids, and so every hunting season you'd rather be hunting than at work. And so it was always kind of an idea of, man, we need to come up with something that we could do. And so through the parent company, we had talked about different things, different options that we could do. And around 2020, we noticed that a lot of the tree stands were sold out. People were having, shipping problems, kind of the world stopped. So logistics wise, there was just a lot of, there were shortages. And so we talked about, maybe that we could do something like that in-house in our facility. And from there, we just started kind of going through different options and looking into what we could do. And then in 2021, got really serious about it and started dialing down on the design and everything of the tree stand. Started making prototypes and started using them and tweaking them from there. And kind of an interesting story on that. The first animal killed out of one of our stands was Josh's elk that he got in Kansas. And
wow, that's awesome.
I mean, what better way to start everything than with an elk in Kansas? I mean, it's just, there's some elk here in Kansas, but it's just in our area, we've never heard of any elk. So that was pretty cool.
That is wild, actually.
Especially out of a tree stand.
Yeah.
Like I don't think, I know guys do hunt elk out of tree stands and stuff. And you don't, like, when you think of elk hunting, right? You think of like out west, Colorado, hiking, because I did it like 2 years ago. It's like we hiked 8 to 10 miles a day, and we didn't see many elk. It was just a bad time of the year. We just didn't go at the right time. But all day long, you're on your feet. Like not even once would we even think to go in a tree stand, you know? So it's different. It's just cool. It's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is cool. So you know, the tree stand that you guys build is not your like everyday tree stand though. It's geared toward a pretty specific group of hunters. I would say it's a pretty high end tree stand. So maybe talk a little bit more about that side of it, who it's geared toward, and why you chose to kind of go that route. Because I think that differentiation is important.
Yeah. Well, the basic one of the first reasons is that we didn't just want to come out with a welded stand that you would typically see imported in from China. It's very hard to compete with China, and that just wasn't the route that we wanted to go. We tend to save our money so we can buy the best gear, whether it's clothing, you know, guns, bows, shotguns, really anything. We tend to try to save our money and buy the higher end stuff. And so when we were looking at what kind of tree stands that we wanted to build, that played a heavy factor into it. It was, you know, the very serious hunters, guys that, you know what they are doing, guys that spend a ton of time out hunting. And we saw that, and that market is growing. The guys that are the mobile hunters, and I mean, we've done it since day one. We just did it with tree stands that weighed, you know, 25, 30 pounds. Our stand is just a little over 10 pounds. So obviously it's a whole lot easier to move that around. Our background is both in aerospace. Our first jobs out of college, we worked for Alcoa, and it was the aerospace division. And so we had a lot of experience with aluminum, and, you know, aluminum that you put in and put on airplanes. So we thought that aluminum would be a perfect fit for, you know, the tree stand that we wanted to make. So that's in a nutshell, that's kind of why we went that direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So to kind of shift gears a little bit, you know, as I was, you know, I've seen you guys before, but then as we were going to come on, I was reading on your website more and learning more about just your product and who you guys are. And one of the things that stood out to me the most on your website, obviously, you know, you guys make a very, very good, high quality product. But one of the things that stood out to me the most was that you talked about your faith a lot on your website, and just curious as to why like a company like yours would feel and I'm not saying this because I don't agree. I'm saying this just to get the you know, an answer to the question. Why you feel like that was important to put. It seemed like it was in everything that you were doing, what your faith was tied into somehow into content on your website. So my question is, why?
Yeah, I'll answer from my perspective, but for me, it's because that's the whole reason of starting a tree stand company. It involves everything that we do. So we grew up in a Christian home. I came to know Christ, I think I was probably around 13. And so our faith really involved, like everything that we do is because of Jesus Christ. And even like when I killed the big deer, I mean, obviously that was a huge blessing from God. And I saw it as an opportunity to share my faith with people that I wouldn't normally be able to interact with. Obviously, you shoot a 200-inch deer, a lot of people take notice. So I saw that as an opportunity to praise God, give glory to God. So when it came to the tree stand company, that's really what it was about for us. It was another avenue that we can share our faith. And just to give you an example, so it's the show that we went to in Pennsylvania is called the Great American Outdoor Show.
Right.
And on the way out there, obviously we're a brand new company. So we're just getting our feet underneath us. But my wife and I prayed numerous times, hey, God, if you do not want this for us, then don't let us sell anything. Like, don't let us sell a tree stand. Don't let us sell a hat. Make it very clear that this is what you want from us and for us. And Saturday comes and goes, and I mean, we killed it. And so it was, and the whole show, I mean, obviously we were blessed. A lot of people stopped by the booth. It was an awesome opportunity to talk to people, and we have a Bible verse on our in our booth, and a lot of people would notice that verse and come in and talk, which obviously that's just another way for us to talk about our faith. You get to hear about other people's story and their faith. But really that's what it comes down to, that we wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for that. And we wouldn't even have the opportunity to do it if it wasn't for him.
For sure. That's awesome, guys. Was that the show, was that like your first kind of exposure of like the product? Like, I guess, let me back up. Was that your first opportunity as a company and as you guys like being able to intermingle with like the outdoor world, that industry, I guess I would say?
Yeah, we launched basically on
Black Friday.
Black Friday. I wanted to say Good Friday, Black Friday. And we were just kind of doing pre-orders. So we officially like launched in December. So the ATA was our first show. Mm-hmm. Obviously that's just people in the business. So the general public doesn't really get to go to that. I mean, if you're in the media, you do. So obviously we were talking with, a lot of people from the industry. So that was our first show that we did, but this was like our first retail show where actually people could, come see our product, feel it, touch it, get up on it. We had a telephone pole that we attached a tree stand to in a device that, people could actually, because that's what's important, is when you actually feel the product. I think that's when people really become sold on it. But yeah, the Great American Outdoor Show, that was our first experience with true retail guys that were going to buy the stand. So
right. The reason I asked that was that like kind of your first, it sounds like anyway, that was your first affirmation or affirmation. I don't even know what the word is, but like,
yeah,
like you left that show and you were like, there's no doubt, like there's literally no doubt that this is what we're supposed to be, this product in this company is what we're supposed to be doing. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a fun show. I went out there for the first 4 days of the show. We left Kansas, I think it was on a Wednesday, pretty early in the morning, and we drove 12 hours on snow and ice packed roads. It was that big storm that went through a couple of weeks ago, and it was a long 25-hour drive. It was supposed to be 18 and a half, and we turned it into 25 because as soon as it stopped snowing, it was raining, and we followed the rain the whole way to Pennsylvania. So it was quite the drive out there. There were times where we were just doing, 40, 45 miles an hour, lots of semis in the ditch. So obviously we had God's protection just to get out there. But yeah, it was a great show. Next year, I'll probably stay for the entire 9 days.
That's great.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's really cool just to see, companies that have that faith that they're really truly rooted in, and that's the main reason that they do it. And even to take it as far as to say, God, like if this isn't what you have for us, then take it from us, and that's okay. Like that's really cool to see, just to see people that are that faithful. It's really impressive. To kind of switch gears again, so we want to talk about, obviously you guys have had a lot of success in the woods, and hunting in general. So just some of the mental, emotional, spiritual side of hunting is what we kind of want to kind of dive into. I think that's a really interesting discussion. So I'll just start it with, at its most basic level, why do you guys hunt? Like, why is it something that you do? And I would ask you to try to take that as deep as you possibly can. I know that there's some some kind of answers that a lot of people use, and if that's your answer, that's fine, where it's like to eat the food that we get, whatever the case might be. But take it that as deep as on the deepest level as you can. Why do you hunt
First. Okay, so I guess to answer that question, you kind of have to, or at least for me, have to go back to kind of the beginning. And so from an early age, I mean, obviously don't have necessarily the memories at, you know, at 4 years old, but I remember going, you know, somewhere, you know, kind of in that range, 4 or 5-ish, going with my dad and my grandpa, and we'd go duck hunting on the Arkansas River. No offense to the people that live in Arkansas, but we call it the Arkansas River.
Funny.
But
That's
you
funny.
know, so I remember going from that early on, and so you know, it was kind of put into us at an early age, and you know, some kids take to it, and some kids don't. I have 3 kids, and of my boys, one's into it, and the other one isn't. He did for a while, and he got out of it. For me, it's you know, it stuck, and so I continued, and so I've hunted, you know, from an early age. And so why I hunt, I think one, it's, you know, it was kind of born into me. I mean, my grandpa hunted, and his dad and his dad. So it's, you know, been in our family for generation after generation. Why I continue to hunt, I don't know that I could, you know, put it to one thing. I mean, there's so many aspects of it that just come into play. I mean, whether it's, you know, seeing God's creation, you know, out in the outdoors, and you know, I mean, even just the sunrise and the sunset. You know, you're out there, you see some of the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets. I mean, it's just, it's hard to compare those from. I mean, I live kind of on the outer edge of town, and it just doesn't compare there. Uh, and then the other, you know, the other things that, you know, the deer, the animals. I mean, just getting to watch them in their habitat. One of the, you know, I killed a deer this year, but one of my favorite hunts was watching a covey of quail, and they were coming out of the trees and into the food plot, and then they saw a deer walking towards them, and in unison they all stopped. And you know, just little things like that just, you know, for somebody that doesn't hunt, maybe it just seems kind of like a silly story, but for me it was, I mean, that's one that I'll continue to remember and think about, just watching, you know, probably 16 quail all stop in unison, and then they didn't move at all, and then the deer's like, you know, it was a doe, and she came up and she was like trying to figure out what was going on. And so just little things like that, um, that just that make it special. And I, not to go on for too long, but one of the other parts this year was my son. He's 14, and he really got to go on some special hunts with us. We went down to South Texas and went duck hunting, and he got to get his first pintail. And
That's great.
you know, seeing the look on his face and seeing that excitement. And then Josh actually got it on video, and you can hear him going, Dad, did you see that? And, you know, things like that, you just, you know, money can't buy those, you know, experiences like that. And so that's kind of, I mean, to keep it kind of short, that's, you know, that's kind of part of what it is for me.
Yeah, it's awesome. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, well, obviously a lot of our story is going to be pretty similar, but I believe that God put in my heart, you know, a desire to be outside. I was meant to be outside. I mean, from an early age, I was outside. I didn't watch cartoons on Saturday mornings. I was outside with my BB gun, whether it was shooting, you know, sparrows or starlings. I was constantly outside. My parents had a hard time keeping me inside. And then as I grew older, you know, college age into my 30s, for a while, why I hunted was, and this is just me being honest, but it was simply self-pleasure. Like it had overtaken the why I should be hunting. And it turned it into something that was not, not good. And it was simply self-pleasure, and it wasn't always used for a good thing. And then, a little more time goes on, I get more mature. God obviously did some stuff in my heart, and I just love being God's creation and seeing something. And it's like, God made that, God made that, God made that. And it's like what Jarad talked about, the sunrises and the sunsets that most people don't get to see because, they're asleep. They're in a city where they can't see them. But things that that God put there for a reason, and it's to bring glory to himself. And how can you not like that or want to be a part of that? The other aspect is, we get to meet guys like you, and have great conversations like this. We get to meet people at trade shows or just wherever, even someone at a gas station, they're getting ready to go duck hunting, you're going out duck hunting, and you get to have a 2-minute conversation, and maybe we, have some impact on that person's life. And so those are big ones. And then just because it's been a part of our family, we grew up listening to our dad and our uncle talking about sheep hunts and dull sheep hunts in Alaska, or moose hunts and all of that, and seeing the slides of all their hunts that they went on, and just sharing the love of hunting with your family. One of the tough things about whitetail hunting is usually it's solo, and so you don't get a lot of interaction, and that's one of the reasons why we like duck hunting as well, because you've got 4 or 5 guys you can take your sons with, and you can take your son deer hunting, don't get me wrong. We did that a lot, but usually it's just solo person up there in that tree stand. And then the other aspect is, we spend a lot of time in a tree stand, and it does allow us to reflect on what's going on in our life, whether it's in our marriage, whether it's in our job, whether it's, with our kids. It gives you a lot of time to think, a lot of time to pray, set priorities. And that's why I like doing it. And it's fun.
That's right. That's right.
We would not be doing this if it was not fun.
Yeah.
It is fun to hunt that big buck that you're after. It's fun to see those mallards swooping into the decoys. So
Yeah.
all of the above, man.
I know we definitely share probably all of those thoughts. I know I don't want to speak for Dave, but then we talk about a lot of this stuff. So one of the things we talk about a lot is like breaking dawn, when dawn breaks, and to your point, so many people miss so many sunrises, and I have a 7-year-old little girl, and you guys both have kids.
Yeah.
So you guys know, like, you take your kid out in the first hunt, like there is literally, like, there's nothing better. Like, I don't even know, I got to do it this year. I took my 7-year-old on her first duck hunt, and God's hands were all over it. And I hunt a lot of public land, and not all, it's all public land that I hunt waterfowl.
Yeah.
So it's a grind, and I just didn't do well this year, but man, I ended up shooting 2 ducks that morning, right at sunrise, like literally a minute after shooting light. And everything was perfect. And we were out of there in 30 minutes, took her to breakfast, and she got to be there, dude. I'll never forget, like, watching the sun come up, and just every little thing about, like, those couple minutes that transpired there, just looking over at her with this big smile on her face and her earmuffs on. And, like, man, it was just so cool. So, like, it's just you're right, man. Those are the things that, like, you just go, you sit there, and, like, if you ever, and we don't, but if you ever did question to God, like,
Right.
like, you don't, when you see things like that, I feel like that's why I think the outdoors is so important, for all of us.
Yeah.
So cool.
So as it relates to hunting, probably more so related to hunting deer, hunting whitetails. Most of the time that we go into the woods, we're probably going to fail. That's just how it goes, right? Like most sits are not going to go exactly as we want. That's just how it is. So, one of the things that I've seen from people who are consistently having success and reaching their goals is they know how to recover from those failures very quickly and to get right back in it, right? Because if you let that hang over you, you're just not going to reach that level of success that you want to. And so for you guys, I know you guys do a lot of hunting and you've had some success. When you're in the middle of a season where things aren't going well or it's failure after failure, how do you overcome that? How do you just get back up and keep going?
Yeah, I'll answer first and then I'll let Jarad go. For me, God gave me a very competitive spirit. I'm very competitive and competitive in my younger days. It was not always good. And so I've definitely, toned that down. But that's probably one of the number one things. I mean, you've got to be competitive to some degree to want to chase, because we're generally chasing 1 or 2 bucks a year, and we don't always get them, obviously, but those are the ones that we're after. And so you have to know and deal with not getting that deer, and sometimes not even seeing him for weeks at a time, because like you said, I mean, I think I had around 80 sits this year for whitetail.
Wow.
And because I was after one specific buck, and I saw him maybe 3 or 4 times, I think, and never got close. Well, I say never got close. One time he came under my stand, but it was 5 minutes after legal, and full moon. I mean, I could see him perfectly. I could see my pin perfectly, but obviously 5 minutes after legal, I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
It made me feel good. Yeah, I was there right where he wanted to be, but he just came in 5 minutes late. One of the things that I use personally during deer season is especially if it's not going well, I'm not seeing a lot, is I'll go duck hunting because usually we've got some spots around here that we can go, and we usually hammer a couple, so we take out our frustrations on the ducks, and then we get back in the stand. The other aspect for me is just knowing that if I'm not out there, there's no way I'm going to kill that deer. Like if I sleep in, and there's days I want to sleep in, because we usually take at least a full week and a half off to hunt a certain time of the rut, and then we're still hunting weekends and hunting whenever we can, but that's the fun part is, hey, if I get up, something good might happen today. It was just like when I killed the elk. I had talked to my wife, and we'd made the plans. Yeah, I was going to go hunt, and then I went to the dentist, and I think he way over numbed me, but like I could not feel half of my face, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to go now. And my wife said, why don't you just go get some tree stand therapy? And it would have been easy to, what, I'm just going to come home. But it's like, hey, there's always that chance that elk could come back. And I hadn't gotten any more pictures of him, hadn't seen him, from the stand. But then, he showed up that night, and if I wouldn't have been in that tree, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. So that's one of the things that really drives me is if you're not in that tree stand, you are not going to kill that deer.
Yeah. So before you jump in, so it sounds like if you go 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and you're just not seeing what you want to see, not seeing anything, your mentality for going out on that 5th day is, okay, like this could be the day. Like this could happen. Is that kind of about how you approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
I've killed a lot of deer that way. And
Yeah.
the majority of the deer that I have killed has been between November 18th and the 21st. And those are some of the days that week I really like hunting. And it's the big bucks have usually, they're going to be on lockdown at some point during that week. And you're just hoping that you're in the, the stand when they come off of those does. But majority by far, the deer that I've killed has been that November 18th, 21st time frame. But you go through a lot of time in the stand without seeing, what we would consider a mature buck or a shooter buck. And so that's, I think, with age comes a little bit of wisdom, and it's like knowing that if you put in that work, a lot of times you're going to be successful. And it doesn't guarantee success, but once again, if you're not in that stand, you're not going to kill.
So
Right.
this,
And I'll give one story. When went hunting in Illinois for 5 days, and I cannot remember it's a big outfitter in Illinois, and the biggest buck I saw up there was 140 inch 10 point. It's not something that I didn't want to shoot. And hunted 5 days, hunted hard a couple of the days, I hunted all day long. I think it was like a 7-hour drive home, and I got home like probably around 2:30 in the morning, and I could have very easily slept in. It was a Saturday morning, and I got 2 hours of sleep. I got back up at 4:30. I was in my favorite stand, and just as the sun was coming up, the target buck that I had showed all the guys in hunting camp in Illinois showed up that morning, and 15, 20 yards away, drilled him, and I was, done. Now, obviously, it would have been very easy to sleep in that morning, but once again, I got that opportunity because I didn't sleep. So
it's awesome, man. I heard you say, and this might be a little bit of a stretch, right? But we try and relate a lot of the hunting stuff too to like real life stuff, like to other things you can apply it to, right? So I heard you say is what I first heard you say is if you're frustrated in a, you're after a deer and you're frustrated, go kill something that's a little bit easier to kill. But what I really heard you say is in like anything in life, if you're really frustrated, like go find a quick win or go find a quick success, because then it gets you back in the saddle and it gets your confidence back up. So I think there is really something to that. Like I did laugh kind of a little bit because like you just took your frustration out on a bunch of ducks, but really you just needed to have some success. I mean, honestly, and then gets you back in the stand. So that's cool, man.
And I think to add on to that, and then we'll kick over to you, Jarad, is, you can't accomplish anything without taking an action. Like you have to do something. You have to get up and go out. Not going out is not taking an action, and nothing's going to happen that day, right? You can guarantee that. So taking action, it's like, okay, if I'm frustrated and I'm not getting where I need to get, continue to take action if you want something to happen. And maybe it won't happen. Maybe it will continue not to happen, but it definitely won't happen if you're not taking any action. That's for sure.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Those couple things, what Corey said, and then just taking action is what is, they sound very simple, but when you're in the middle of the grind of a season, they're a lot harder to do than you're making it sound. They are. So how about you, Jarad?
As with a lot of things, Josh and I are similar in a lot of ways. We have, kind of the same stories, but I think it's part of it is that kind of no quit attitude. And we didn't by any means come up with the phrase. I don't even know where we heard it. It may have been somebody that told us one time. It was, you can't kill them from the couch.
Yep.
And I don't know how many times a year we'd say that, kind of when things are slow and it's like, well, I'm just not sure if I'm going to go out there today. And, then kind of the saying comes up, and I know I at least think of it a lot, of you can't kill them from the couch. And it's a simple saying, but it really is true. It's, you're not going to get that buck if you're not out in the field. Um, what Josh was talking about, maybe we'll go hunt ducks or something just to change it up. There's also sometimes where I will hunt a specific spot. We have a spot that we've never had like huge bucks on it, but it's a spot that we really enjoy hunting. It's a really pretty area. You get some really pretty sunsets, and then you typically see quite a few deer. And so, sometimes when you're in an area, maybe you don't see anything for an evening, and it starts to kind of it wears on you. And so that's we have a spot that, we hunt at a decent amount, but I know for myself, I use it sometimes as kind of a pick me up of I'll go there. And that's actually the spot, where I told the story about the covey of quail. That was actually that spot. And it's just, it seemed like a higher traffic area. And so that's always good. I mean, you sit in a tree stand for 6 hours and don't see one deer, and you really start to question things.
Yeah.
Question even your life at times, because you have a lot of time to think. And so, I think that carries over to life. For me, I haven't had a perfect life. I was blessed and fortunate in the family that I grew up. But that I think with everybody, you make some decisions, and some go right and some don't. And you have a choice whether you keep pushing forward, or you can I'm getting into a little bit more of a personal side, but you can play that victim game where you start to blame other things. And that can apply to hunting as well. You start making excuses for everything instead of focusing on, okay, what am I, is there something that I'm missing here? Is there something that I need to change? And this kind of goes back and forth, but is there something that I need to change in my life, or is there something that I need to change in my approach in hunting? You can get comfortable on, you have your favorite stand, and I think about this throughout the year. I have a favorite spot, and it's one where I've killed probably 4 or 5 deer from, and sometimes I get comfortable there, and then I start to think about it, and it's like, hey, maybe I need to put a stand in a different area on that spot. Maybe I need to be a little bit more aggressive in, maybe getting into the bedding area or something like that. And I think that, that changes over to life too. Sometimes we get comfortable in a spot that we're in, and you start to look into things, and it's like, hey, maybe I need to make some changes. Maybe I need to, get into the word more, and maybe I need to start praying more, and some things like that. And so, I mean, I'm incredibly thankful that I do get the opportunity to hunt, because, some of the life lessons that I've learned from hunting, I'm able to apply into my life as well. And just that kind of no quit attitude. It's you keep going forward, because if you hunt for long enough, and especially if you bow hunt, you're going to have those failure stories. And then if you're fortunate enough to have a brother, he's going to remind you of those stories quite often.
That's what he's supposed to do.
It's only fair, man. It's only fair.
That's right.
So guys, I do have a question for both of you. Growing up, I think I was conditioned to hunt a certain way. I was taught by my dad, who, bless his heart, just wasn't the best hunter, right? He was a rifle hunter. We'd spend, 2 weeks out of the year in Pennsylvania hunting rifle. We didn't hunt in the rain. We'd go out, we'd go out till 9:30 in the morning. We'd go eat lunch. We'd go back out in the afternoon. That was it. Like, that was my extent of it. We did a little bit of archery hunting, but it wasn't until I like really started to learn on my own, and from honestly just guys that just were better at hunting, to put myself in a better position to kill a nice buck. How were you, and maybe you guys, maybe you guys were surrounded by that very early on. I don't know, but like, how has your mindset changed to where you can be better than the next guy and put yourself in, I guess, better positions, and for instance, like, yes, deer do move during the rain. And I know that's a simple one, but like, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of guys don't feel that way, and they'll sit on the couch, like we were just talking about, and they won't go out, but deer do move in the rain. So things like that, how has your mindset changed over the years? And is it just through experience, or like, I don't know, like how has that changed so that you're killing bigger deer?
Yeah, I'll take this one first, unless you really wanted to go first. I started bow hunting. I think I was 24, 25 when I started bow hunting. I tried the rifle thing, and it just, shooting a deer from 300 yards just wasn't my thing. If I go out of state, a lot of times, especially if we're going to Alaska, I'll take a rifle. I try to take my bow, but it's just not always feasible, especially if you have, a short window. But I started bow hunting when I was 24, 25 range. And I was just trying to kill a good deer, but I was surrounded by guys that, had been hunting, for 30 years, had been bow hunting for 30 years, and they had killed some great ones, some big deer. And so those guys, obviously they spoke into my life as far as kind of the do's and don'ts, and I learned from those guys, but a lot of it was self-taught. But even from the beginning, maybe not the first deer I shot with my bow, but I was always trying to kill the biggest deer that I saw, or the biggest deer that I knew of. If you, obviously in Kansas, we have big deer. And so you can, if you work really hard, you might be able to find that 180-inch deer, but not everyone has that opportunity. So I was just trying to find and hunt the biggest deer on the properties that I hunted. And when we would go out to Western Kansas, we would always take a trip out to Western Kansas where we can hunt mule deer. And so you would try to find the biggest mule deer, and that's what you would go after. As time went on, for me, it was becoming comfortable with not punching that tag. That, I had matured enough, I think, that it was okay. I'm going to pick one or two specific deer, and they're not just that 3.5, 4.5. We're talking, I like shooting them when they're, 6.5 to 8.5, and being comfortable with not punching that tag. If you're going to chase those bigger deer, you have to get comfortable with, eating tag soup. And I've done that, more times than I cared to admit. But that for me, and it wasn't just about killing, because I don't know, it's not always that 8.5-year-old deer is not always going to score great.
Right.
But I know that if I kill an 8.5-year-old deer, like, that's saying something. That, those guys get smart quick, and they definitely get smarter the older they get. And it's finding that one thing that, they mess up on, they daylight themselves one day, and you kill them on that day. So for me, that's just kind of been the progression. Score was super important. Now for me, it's, and the farms that we hunt, and even when we do public, we're not trying to kill that 3.5, 4.5. We're trying to take out those older ones, because that's how you continue to grow big deer. If you're always shooting that 3.5-year-old, they're just never going to reach their full potential. So
yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, for us, we didn't grow up hunting whitetails, with my dad or with my grandpa, and so we really didn't have much experience there. And so, once we, became adults and got jobs, and then we were around guys that deer hunted, I would say that that's where we learned probably, you know, at least the base from it. I don't claim to be an expert deer hunter by any stretch of the imagination.
I'll vouch for that.
I'm kidding. You know, there's guys out there that are, you know, they could probably be a part-time wildlife biologist as much, you know, as they know. And so I don't want to, you know, act like I know, you know, more than most people. But I am by nature, I'm an analytical person. And so I do, when I'm out in the field, I do notice certain things, may seem like a small thing, you know, but for a lot of guys, it's hard to stay still. And I find that at times, but then, you know, when that doe busts you and you start thinking, you know, through the hunt, and it's like, okay, you know, was there a buck that was in the trees and I never saw him, but he saw me? You know, just because, you know, you don't see any deer or there aren't any around you, doesn't mean that they aren't there. And so it's, you know, just things like that you, not necessarily from people, but you start noticing different things. And so you start having to analyze, okay, what, you know, is there a reason I didn't see deer tonight? You know, was I careful with my scent? Did I push the limits on the wind tonight? Or the wind shifted and, hey, you know what, maybe I should have gotten down out of the stand and just called it a day, instead of taking that chance, you know, that they wouldn't smell me or that they would maybe come from a different direction. And so, you know, I think it's been some things like that. And like Josh said, you know, trying to get to a point where you're comfortable with going a season and not shooting a buck, and becoming comfortable. Well, I don't know that you ever get comfortable, but knowing that somebody else might shoot that deer that you pass up and you had plans for him next season. It was like, okay, next year is going to be the year that I think he's really going to be. And that's happened more times than I care to admit, where it's like, okay, we're passing on that one, and then that one gets killed. And you know, I mean, I've shot deer that I probably shouldn't have, but and then I've gone plenty of years where I didn't shoot deer. Just, you know, I passed up ones that just weren't quite where I wanted it, and it's a tough call, especially later on in the season. You know, as the end of the season's approaching, and one of those deer, you know, come in, you have to. And it's easy. It's a little bit easier for Josh and I think, in that we play off of each other, and you know, we'll talk about the deer that we have on camera and that we've seen, and say, okay, hey, that one's off limits. Let's not. And you know, he knows that I'll get mad at him if he shoots it, and I know that he's going to get mad at me, and I'll hear about it if I were to shoot it. So, you know, some of that, I think. And then also surrounding yourself with people that are as serious about it and are as dedicated as you are about it. That makes a difference. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, the people that, you know, like you said, your dad, you know, he hunted 2 weeks out of the year, and you know, that was his time to go out, and it was, you know, hey, we hunt this time, we don't hunt rainy days, we don't hunt, you know, snow, and oh, it's, you know, 15 degrees and 30-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah, we don't hunt those days. You know, that's fine. I mean, if somebody enjoys that, that's great. I mean, there's all different, you know, levels of hunting, and that might be the wrong word, because that might have a little bit of a negative connotation to it. But there's just some people enjoy, you know, a few times, and then other people, yeah, you may be out there 50, 60 times, and you may be out there on the nasty days where you look into the wind and you can't even breathe. And it just, I think that level of seriousness kind of passes off to you and you can feed off each other when you surround yourself with people like that.
That's true. For sure. So I know we're coming up on an hour here, so we'll kind of start to wrap things up. But one final question, just to kind of stay on this topic, was from an advice standpoint. I feel like there's a lot of hunters out there that aren't achieving the results that they desire. And so, in your guys' opinion, what do you think is the biggest thing that holds people back from a mental standpoint, not from an X's and O's standpoint? That could be anything, obviously, but from a mental approach, a mental standpoint, what is holding people back from achieving the results that they want to achieve?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I can start.
I have one, but yeah, go ahead.
I think some of that is don't talk yourself out of it. I'm kind of going through this with my 20-year-old son. I'll say something to him, or he'll bring up something, and he's like, sometimes his immediate reaction, well, no, that won't work because of this. I'm like, you're already telling me it's not going to work without even trying. And it's easy to say, oh, it's raining, the deer aren't going to be moving anyways. Or it's, the wind is too much, I'm not even going to have a shot at it. And talking yourself out of it right away without pushing yourself forward to do it. I've had those. I mean, I get those same thoughts. It's 30 miles an hour, or the wind is, and it's like, well, shoot, I'm not even gonna be able to shoot at the deer because the tree's going to be swaying enough that he comes in and the tree's moving, and I'm trying to draw back on him. I won't be able to make an accurate shot. Or the deer just aren't going to be moved. They're going to be bedded down, trying to stay warm and stuff. And I go into it with a mindset of, this could be the night, or this could be the morning that deer come, the buck that we're after, where he comes out, and to try and have that positive attitude where going into each set, it's like, this could be the one. And then I think the other part is just going through your hunt process and analyzing the different areas, whether it's scent control, whether it's wind, whether it's stand placement, things like that, going through that and really looking at it every year. Am I doing everything possible? Am I going through all the steps? We go through a process. I mean, we shower in the scent free stuff before we leave. We get in clothes that we've washed in scent free, detergent. And then when we get out to the stand, we change our clothes into, our hunting stuff that we've washed with that. And so it's making sure you're taking the steps to be successful. I think that's kind of where it is for me, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that I would say is that you kind of have to define what success looks like. Like, what does success look like for the guy in Pennsylvania that's hunting nothing but public land? What's success like for the guy in Iowa that has, 1,200 acres on a farm? What does success look like in Kansas or Oklahoma, where maybe you're hunting an 80-acre farm? That success, or what success looks like, is going to be different for everybody, whether it's a guy that only gets to hunt a couple weekends a year because of work constraints or family constraints. Because that's the other thing that I'll add is, obviously, we're going to say hunt as much as you can, but not, don't put your family in jeopardy or in peril, or, obviously if you're gone every night, that's not always good for your family. And I've definitely had to learn that. So I will put that caveat in there. So when we're talking about hunting as much as you can, obviously that's not, at the detriment of your family. But setting that, what does success look like? So someone in Pennsylvania shooting an 8.5-year-old buck might not be feasible but maybe shooting a 3.5. I mean, obviously the guys in Pennsylvania, from what I read, the age structure's starting to go up because, they're doing quality deer management out there. And so first you got to define what success looks like. And then, you take it from there. And if you're not getting the success that you want, is what's in your head, is it even obtainable? Obviously, I'd love to shoot a 185-inch whitetail every year, but it's probably just not going to happen. And I've shown that for me, it's not going to happen because I try to shoot as big a deer that I can, and I only have a couple of those what I would call giant whitetails on the wall. And then you just take it from there. And like Jarad said, you got to analyze if you're not having success. One of the things that I laugh about is when guys say, I didn't have one deer win me this fall, and I'm like, like, how do you know that? Like, I mean,
Right.
deer come from every which direction. Just because they didn't blow at you does not mean that they didn't smell you and go back down that trail. But for me, probably the biggest thing that I focus on is wind direction. Like, if the wind is wrong for a set, I do not hunt it. I just don't. I've been burned too many times, and where we hunt, if you bump a buck, because our bucks tend to roam a lot where we hunt, and if you bump him, there's a good chance you are not going to see him again. So you usually have one, especially at those older ones, you've got one chance. And so we religiously hunt the wind. If it's not right, then we just don't hunt it. And that goes for entry as well. I'll walk an extra half mile to get to a spot if I have to, because of the way the wind goes. But yeah, that's how I'd answer that question. First, you got to define what does success look like, and then you got to determine, okay, what's it going to take to get that success.
And I think on that success part, we were out at the show in Pennsylvania, and so we had a few of our deer up on our booth, and then we had our pictures and stuff. And I noticed as we'd be talking to guys, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've got a really good buck," and everybody wants to see each other's deer, and so they'd be starting to pull up their phone, and they'd be like, "Well, he's a good buck for here. I know he's not as big as Kansas deer," and that that part, it was like, hey, you hunt with what's in your area. Yeah, Pennsylvania deer aren't going to necessarily be Kansas deer. Just like, normally I would say Kansas, we don't get elk, but and that happened.
Prove that one wrong.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I can't use that analogy anymore.
No.
I mean, thanks, Josh, I screwed that up. But and that's where I think, and I'm as guilty of it as other people, but as hunters, we get into this kind of comparison of, well, man, is everybody going to like this deer? Is this deer, is it going to be big enough to, where other people think, oh, wow, that's a great deer. And that's where it kind of made me, as they were saying that, it kind of made me sad almost to hear that. And I understand it because I do the same thing myself. But knowing that there's different areas, I mean, and like Josh said, yeah, you'd love to get a 200-inch deer every year. And I've even read articles on how to kill a 200-inch buck every year. And I'm sorry, but unless you're hunting a spot that has a 200-inch buck in the area,
good luck.
You're probably not going to get it. I mean, if there's no 200-inch buck within 100 square miles, I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to get it. So, it's, you hunt with what's in your area. And if it's a buck that, is a good deer and you're doing that quality deer management and it makes you happy, then, to me, that's success too. And each person kind of has to determine what, like Josh said, you have to determine what your success is. And so if, you're in an area, say, I don't mean to pick on Pennsylvania, but if you're in Pennsylvania and you're your definition of success is to kill a 180-inch deer, you're going to probably have a lot of unsuccessful years. And so, that would be, I guess, my advice. And I have to listen to it myself sometimes is, don't make your success dependent on what others call success.
Yeah, I think for us too, like we've learned over the years, which again, no matter where you're hunting, is a lot of the time we underestimate the amount of work you have to actually put in to kill what you want to kill. And that's for us. And I feel like we've been seeing a lot of this lately where guys have really started to come out and say, it took 28 sits in a row for me to kill this deer. Like, and so for a lot of guys, for most guys, they're wanting to kill a 150 or a 140 in PA even. They may not even physically have the capabilities to have the time to even put in to do that, right? So to your point, knowing what work you can physically put into it, mentally put into it, the expectations should align with that. And I know it's not perfect science because, again, sometimes you can go in and sit one time and kill a deer you didn't even know was there. So it's
Right.
hunting.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of a, and we've had, Corey, discussions around this a lot for the past probably 3 years. It's kind of like a 2-part process. It's what do you want to achieve? Like, what are you defining as success? Then you have to kind of set the expectations for that. And then you have to just be okay with the expectations that are coming out of that. So if you say, okay, in Pennsylvania, I want to kill a 150 every year, but I can only hunt 10 times a season, you got to understand that you might go 25 years and never even see that deer. And if you're okay with that, right, then that's okay. Like, you can do that. That is completely fine. If you're like, I'm going to hunt for 25 years and I'm going to pass every single deer unless it's a 150. If you're okay with that, then that's okay. But I think where people get tripped up is they have this goal, and then they set these unrealistic expectations of what it's going to take to get there. It's, I'm going to kill a 150. Well, I'm going to just find this property that has one, and I'm going to sit, 10 times, and I'm going to kill them, and then I'm going to do that every year. It's not a realistic expectation, right? It's just not going to happen. So it's kind of like a process that you have to go through. It seems like, and then to get back to your true definition of success. But that is a discussion that I feel like more people in the hunting community need to be having with each other. Yeah. Because like you said, Kansas is not the same as Pennsylvania, and that's okay, right? That's okay. And my goals are not the same as your guys' goals, and that's okay too. And we can't just be comparing to each other all the time. It's just an unhealthy place to be. Mm-hmm. We should be celebrating each other, and be excited when someone else gets excited for what they've done, instead of, oh, well, you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, or, oh, well, this is what I want to get. And, are people going to be excited for me, or am I going to look a certain way if I shoot this animal? We need to get rid of all of that, and it needs to come down. Is the individual excited for what they're doing? And if they are, everyone should be surrounding them and being excited for them too. We need to get back to that as a community. We just do.
Absolutely.
And the reality is, guys, and this, it's like, if you're not in a state that has 150s all over the place, and I'm not saying Kansas has 150s all over the place. I've never been there, never hunted. I know they have bigger deer there. I get it.
Yeah, go
travel.
For the record, guys, go hunt Iowa.
Yeah.
Don't come to Kansas. We don't have very many big deer. Go hunt Iowa.
Fair enough.
The tag is too expensive anyway. We'll probably go to Missouri. But
Perfect.
You know what I mean though? It's like, you can travel. There's so many opportunities to go kill a 150 on public land in Missouri or something. And I know you still have to put work in, but like, you might have a better opportunity doing it there. And if you want to get it done quicker, be willing to, there's so much opportunity to go hunt other states. I mean, it's the beauty.
Yeah. Missouri's over the counter, and I think it's under $300 for the license.
It is.
Yeah. You put in for Kansas, you're probably going to get it once every other 2 years. Iowa, I've heard, is now up to like 1 in 5 years. So
I heard that. Yeah. Jeez. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think you bring up a good point. It is putting in the work. Whether that's pre-scouting. I mean, I think I've seen the people that I've seen that are successful on, some of those public ground hunts. I think what gets missed in some of those YouTube videos and some of the shows is the amount of work that those people put into it, whether it's, hours upon hours on Onyx or some, hunting map app, or, guys that maybe drive 13 hours in the summer to go scout a location and determine where they're wanting to put stands.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think that part does get missed a lot. Like you said, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And that's kind of one of the things I think that we've learned, when we talked about what have you learned or what have you done different. We're spending probably more and more time each year working on food plots and clearing out different areas to make a food plot bigger, or to get, multiple food plots in. And that work really does become an important part. And yeah, you can get lucky. You can go out and first day you shoot something and you haven't, really done much. But it usually doesn't happen year after year.
Right.
If it does, maybe you should start looking at playing the lottery, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point. A lot of that just work and grind doesn't get talked about as much, doesn't get seen, like the consecutive sits where you're not seeing a deer. Like no one really talks about that. And the, hiking, 10 miles in February to look for sign from the previous year. You're not seeing any deer, you're not finding any sheds, you're just hiking in the woods, right? There's not much to talk about there, so no one talks about it. But that's the grind, and that's the work that people put in. And then they see, them post a picture where they shot, a 160 on public land. Well, they didn't see all the other stuff that went into killing that deer. And I guarantee that people that are doing that year after year, they're not just willy-nilly walking into the woods and killing a 160 every year. It's just not happening. It's not happening.
I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to really focus this podcast on the mental side of it is because we both, from our experiences, like being physically fit, obviously that's become a big thing in the outdoor industry right now. Now, I don't disagree. I think it definitely helps. Like you should be physically fit when you're hunting, especially archery, and you're whatever. It doesn't matter. All the hours you put in, like you just need to take care of yourself. Yeah. But like the mental side of it, I think is even harder for guys sometimes. And it might not even be the physical 2-mile walk in. It's the mental 2-mile walk in 7 days in a row, not seeing a deer. That mental piece can make you quit quicker than the physical piece can in some cases. And that's why we really wanted to focus on the mental side,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And even you talk to guys that guide up in Alaska for like dull sheep, and they say usually the hindering factor on people's hunts is not their physical ability, but it's their mental aspect and how they handle adversity. And like you said, how do they handle going 6 days without seeing a dull sheep, and it's day 7 and it's windy and rainy outside? Are you going to get out of that tent and go after it, or are you going to stay in the tent? So the mental side is a huge part of it.
For sure. Well, I have one more question, but Corey, do you have any questions before I ask my one question?
No, you got to ask the final question.
Final question.
Yeah.
Fine. It's a good one. It's a doozy.
It's always a good one.
So, as you get to know Corey and I, one of the most important things, probably the most important thing that we focus on when we're hunting is not the actual hunt. It's not the X's and O's. It's none of that. It's what snacks we bring on our hunts with us.
Yeah.
So we need to know, what are your go-to snacks on hunts so we can get new ideas. So we're asking everybody this because this is something we take serious. Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, it's funny that this is the last question, because we have the running joke that when we run out of snacks, the hunt's about over because
Yeah,
no one,
it's true.
no one, no one wants to starve to death in a tree stand. And if you don't have snacks, you might starve to death.
Yep.
My favorite, and this is like nothing, it's not new but I love gummy worms. I love gummy worms, and they're the Black Forest gummy worms. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're like premium gummy worms. And then we buy the 40 packs of I don't even know what kind I think they're the Mott's, the little packages, and they're not gummy worms, but
Fruit snacks.
yeah, fruit snacks.
Ooh, yeah.
Fruit snacks. Yes.
We buy those by the packages of 40. And then
you can usually find them like in the console of his truck or the side, on the side of the door.
Great.
I noticed. So Josh and a group drove out to Pennsylvania, and then I flew out kind of midweek. I flew out Tuesday night, and I noticed that. So then they flew back, and so we had the truck. And I noticed that there were multiple packages of fruit snacks all over the truck. So I knew he had been in there.
I knew
so
I liked you guys.
I just left so I could show you guys this.
Here we go.
It's in focus.
Yeah.
But they've also got one. I think it's like a vanilla, and then they have like a straight peanut butter one. But they're called Power Crunch protein energy bars. And they are, I mean, they come in, I think it's like a 5-pack.
Yep.
But they're super filling, so it can, usually hold me over for a while. I like to take apples.
Yeah.
I used to take in beef jerky, but the more I got concerned about scent control and going in, scent free, I don't know that peanut butter bar is going to spook a deer, but maybe, beef jerky might. I don't know.
Who knows?
But that jerky tends to stay on your hands, and I just don't like the smell, so I don't take jerky anymore. But those are my go-to. And a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I mean, it's a staple for me. If it's going to be a long sit, so
it's a staple.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I do like those. From the candy, more snackish side of things, Sour Patch Kids, I love those.
Classic.
I'll eat those until my tongue gets kind of raw from all that, the sour part.
The sandpaper.
And the other part is like the Reese's peanut butter cups, but I like the seasonal ones. So like at Easter, the eggs, and at Christmas they have the trees. And so I usually try and stock up on those, and I've recently had to really start hiding them better in my house, because if I leave them out, my kids get through them, and then I'm not a happy hunter when I go out hunting and I don't have those. Oh, and then I also like the nutty bars. So I do like the peanut butter flavored snacks.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's, we joke about that. About it being a life and death situation if we run out of snacks.
It is. You're sitting out there all day. Usually, most of the time, nothing's happening, and so you're hungry. You got to eat.
Yeah.
The problem is, you hit like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you're like starting to get through your snacks for plan for the whole day, because you're just like, I'm hungry, I'm bored. I'm blowing through my snacks, and then what do you do? So that's a problem we're trying to figure out. And
there's been times where Dave and I have hunted, and we're packing our stuff, and we look over and we're like, dude, the snacks, and I've taken things that are almost necessary to hunt with out of the pack, so I could put the snacks in, so we have the snacks. And the reason we ask this question now is because if we ask it in the beginning of the podcast, then we get too hungry and then we can't think straight. So see, now I'm starving. Now I want to go eat literally.
So now we're wrapping up to go out and get some snacks. I mean, that's how we do it. So
yeah, I'm probably going to leave here and go get some ice cream now that we've.
Of course, you have to.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, that was definitely the most important question. So just made sure we fit that one in. But I mean, no,
Yes.
seriously, guys, thank you so much for coming on here and hanging out with us. And I know I really enjoyed our conversation, just diving in deep to some of those topics that don't get talked about as much, but I do feel like are really important. So we just appreciate you guys coming on. So before we jump off, can you just let people know how they can get in touch with you, how they can contact you, if they're interested in working with you or purchasing some of your products?
Yeah, so if you want to find us on the web, it would be www.elevatestand.co. It's not .com, it's .co. And then Instagram, Facebook, look up Elevate Stand Co. and you'll find us. Love to talk to you. If you message us on Facebook or Instagram, you're going to get Jarad most likely. We don't farm that out. We're taking that on. The 1-800 number comes to our cell phone. So if you have questions, reach out to us on the website. It has the 1-800 number. So yeah.
I think the other part is that we were at the show there. We're also going to be doing the Iowa Big Buck Classic or Deer Classic. So that's in Des Moines, Iowa. So that's March 4th through the 6th. And that, I know for us, we've really enjoyed, just basically everybody that we get to meet. And who doesn't like to meet people and talk about hunting and sharing stories. And it's like Josh, I think, talked about earlier, we have a setup to where the people can stand on the stand and can sit on there as well. And so it's, it's kind of hard to shop online sometimes. I mean, you can read all the specifications and everything, but you can't get a feel for how light the stand is and how it feels when you pick it up or how it feels when you step onto it or when you sit on it. So it's, I think we have a couple other shows planned, an Illinois show and then one in Kansas. And if you follow our Instagram, we'll be talking about that and sharing those dates as well. So
yeah, the one in Kansas is in Overland Park. It is March 11th to the 13th, if I got my dates right. And then Peoria, Illinois, April 1st to the 3rd. So
well, I'll put all that information also in the description of the podcast so they have
awesome. Thank you.
So yeah, man. Anything else you guys want to share before we wrap this thing up and let you guys go eat your snacks?
No, this has been awesome. I really like the aspect that you guys are doing these podcasts from. That definitely caused us to, we got some of these questions a little bit earlier. So it gave us some time to, really think, it's like, I haven't even thought about that for a while. Like, why do I do that? So yeah, no, we thank you for having us on and giving us a chance to get introduced to your guys' audience. So
yeah, absolutely. And we're looking forward to meeting you guys in person at some point. I'm sure it'll happen soon. And we just appreciate you guys. Always awesome to meet other brothers in Christ. And our ultimate mission is to spread the gospel, man. And that's you guys are doing that through what you're doing through your company, and anything we can do to support you in that mission, and anything else you're doing, let us know. And man, we're just looking forward to meeting you in person at some point.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you guys.
You got it, man. Well, thanks everyone for watching, listening, and tune into another episode of the Rooted Outdoors podcast. Thanks to these guys, and we'll talk to you guys on the next podcast. Take care.
Cool. See you guys. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with everything happening at Rooted Outdoors.